Before we start this video, a large thank you to Caden, Gerardo, Sark2422, Megumi, Marceline, and Friday for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And, as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their immense support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, so I have the Cinti Dungeon Pack here. I just use this because it's already got some stuff set up and I can showcase what's happening very easily. And what I've done is I've taken segments from it and I put them in their own individual little parent objects. So I'm going to start this video by creating a world location manager by making an empty game object and adding our world location manager script to it. I'm then going to make a prefab folder and I'm going to drag this in to make a prefab. Now remember, this world location manager is going to be present in the world scene at all times. Next, I'll do the same thing for the world scene manager, creating its game object and dragging it in, making a prefab, putting our world scene manager script on it, but I'm going to delete that from the scene because this goes on your first scene. It's going to go into every scene that you ever load into, whereas the world location manager is only going to stay in your world scene, which is loaded after the main menu. So you can see here I have all these locations put into these game objects for the most part. I just have all of the stuff that was under them dragged underneath each one. But I'm going to show you how I would set it up basically with all the objects the way they are. So let's just disable everything here, and you can see the main hall is what we're going to focus on first. So this is a set of game objects I've highlighted and put in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide this into separate scenes. So you can see this is just a lot of game objects. Now, the more dense your area is, the more you might want to divide it into sub-scenes. But for the sake of this video, I'll keep it very simple. I'm going to do 3 for each. We'll do structure, props, and then effects. But like I said, you could do it for walls, trees, windows. If you have hundreds or thousands of these things, the more sub-scenes there are, the less it's going to have the potential to stutter or hiccup. So I'm going to create this new scene called Dungeon Main Hall Structure. And I'm going to drag my dungeon main hall in here, just underneath it. But before I do it, actually, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this blank scene because we're going to be using this a lot. So I'm just going to have a blank scene here I can duplicate when I need to make more. So we have structure. Cool. Now let's save that. Now let's go and duplicate this blank scene 2 more times because, as I said, I'm going to make one for props, and I'm going to make one for effects. So the naming convention here I'm using is dungeon, which is the main zone, and then main hall, which is the sub-zone. So if you had a game that took place in a forest, and inside that forest there was a trail, you could say forest, trail, and then structure, props, effects. This is just what I do. I find it's very helpful when designing levels. It keeps it very neat. But next we're going to go in and highlight, and we're going to look for keywords. So whatever you got. For my case, I'm going to use props because these are all named prop. And I'm going to just drag them in here. You can see I can't drag them in unless I get out of the search. So I can close out of the search and drag this in. But you can see here, sometimes I got to scroll all the way up just to get a prefab, only to scroll all the way back down. And that's really annoying if you have a massive scene that you're trying to convert into this world. So go over here and add another tab and add a hierarchy tab. And that will just give you the exact same thing over here. And we can drag it from left to right. Just make sure you lock the tab over there or else this will happen. Watch, if I highlight the effects, you can see it opens it up. We don't want that, but if I hit this lock button here, I can drag this effect over into the scene, and this makes it so much easier to work with. So next, I'm going to simply do the same thing with a bunch of stuff, and I'll just do the structure, and I'll let you sort out the props and effects just to give you an example, but I'm going to divide my structure into walls, and we'll say floors and ceiling. That's probably good. I think this utilizes all of this. And we can search for keywords. I know my floor is called tile. My walls, obviously, I just search wall, and then I'm just going to make sure I grab everything. Not going to grab the children objects of prefabs or else it won't let me drag them in. And then I'll drag them into this over here, and there we go. And you might be asking, why am I dragging them into separate game objects? Well, another trick you can do for optimization is you could disable all of the game objects on start, and when the scene loads, you can enable them one after each frame, and this will again reduce the chance of stuttering. I can cover that too if you guys want, but basically if we just go in here too and add these scenes to your scene list. We need to do that or else they won't load. But if you just divide these into separate game objects and load them piece by piece after the scene is loaded, this further lowers the chance again of a stutter. So I'm going to create a folder called data, and I'm going to create a folder in that called scene locations. And now I am going to create my first world location, which again is the scriptable object we made in the last video. I'm going to call this dungeon main, and then I'm going to call this hall, because this is going to be the dungeon main hall. And then dungeon main hall is going to consist of 3 scenes. the structure, the props, and the effects. So it's worth noting too that the order you put these in, they're going to load in. So if you want some specific order for whatever reason, again, not going to go into why you might because it's beyond the scope of the series, but if you want a specific order, put them in the order that you want. I'm going to load mine by structures, props, and effects last, and I'm going to continually do this for each location. Now, locations required for this location, we don't have any yet, so let's go make one. I'll do one more on video for you, and then I'll, through the magic of editing, skip some parts. But you can see here, this is where my main hall was. It's gone now. But we can still drag that in if you want to see it by dragging in all the 3 scenes we just made. We know the main hall is connected to the throne room, and we know it's also connected to the dirt caves, as I've called it, right below it. So let's do the throne room first. I'm going to duplicate my blank scene here, and I'm going to rename it to throne room structure. So it's going to be dungeon _ throne room _ structure. I will drag that into the scene, but first I'm going to duplicate it 2 more times and make props and effects. So I'm putting each of these scenes into 3 separate areas, basically. You might want to do more, you might want to do less, depending on the scene. I'm just keeping it consistent for the sake of the tutorial. I'm going to drag in my throne room and save everything, and then only load my throne room scene, because now I can just search the game objects only in the scene. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to basically put them in their proper subscenes by dragging in the 2 other subscenes, effects and props. So here we go. It's done through the magic of editing. I have walls, floor, ceiling, and other, and I have my effects and props. So now we can duplicate the scene location and change the location from dungeon main hall to dungeon _ throne room. And then again, we make sure we go over here and drop in the proper scene names. I'm just going to empty the list. And first though, I'm going to go to my build profiles, open my scene list, and make sure I add these open scenes so they can be loaded. Don't forget to do that with every scene that you create. Next, I'm going to lock this tab up here in a sec, and whoops, didn't lock it. Going to go back and lock this tab and put in the 3 names here. So it's going to be dungeon, throne room structure, props, and then effects. Okay, so we know that the main hall requires the throne room, so we can drag in the required scenes here. And the opposite is also true. The throne room is going to require the main hall. So what's the idea about how you know what is required? Well, basically, if you can see the scene when the player is standing in it from another scene, you know it's required. So I'm going to drag in all my subscenes as created so you can see the world in its entirety here. But wherever I'm standing, if I can see another scene from that location, I know that area needs to be loaded in because I have to, not see the void. I have to see every area that I possibly can. So sometimes a scene might require 3 or 4 scenes, and other times it might only require 1 or 2. So I've made the rest of the scenes here. As you can see, I got the dirt caves, and this requires the dungeon throne, the main hall, and the ice caves, which is here, here, and here. And then I have the ice caves, which requires only the dirt caves because it connects to this part right here, and you can't really see anything else from it. And then I have the main hall, which is the square in the center here, and that requires the throne room and the dirt caves right back here, and then the stone caves up along the side of the throne room. And then the stone caves is this big place over here. It only requires the throne room because you can't see anything else from it. So again, the idea is just going through all these. You only want to make the scene require what you can see if you were standing in it. And I'm pretending this is a third-person game. So my character's going to be in these zones, and you can't see, to the other end of the map. So I have all my scenes. I'm going to duplicate one more blank scene and make a menu scene. We're just going to create a very rudimentary menu just to load into the game and start the network. So what I'm going to do here is create a canvas, and again, this is going to be super basic because this falls outside the scope of the tutorial. If I were to make a whole main menu system and such, I'm just going to make a button that we click and we go to the world. I'm going to import TMP because this is a brand new project. I'm going to make the button basically start the game, but first I'll make a background under my canvas, and I'm going to make the canvas set with scale to screen size. The reference resolution is going to be 1920 by 1080, so standard HD. And then I'm going to make the background the full size of the screen by holding Alt and clicking this arrow. And then I'm going to drag the button, or rather center it in the middle over here. I'm going to drag it below background in the hierarchy so I can see it. And then I'm going to put the event system up here just because I want to. I'm going to go to the text here on the button and say Start Network. Actually, we'll do it all in one button. We're just going to start the game. There we go, Start Game. Now I'm going to go to the button and make sure it is centered. And now we need to make one more script here, a very rudimentary menu script. So I'm going to go first to the World Scene Manager prefab and drag that in because this is where you want it on your main menu scene, the first scene that loads. And then I'm going to create an empty game object and call this World Network Manager because we need to set up Unity's Network Manager for netcode. We do that by putting on the Network Manager on this. And don't worry, that handles a singleton on its own. There can only be one that will deal with that for you. Also add Unity's transport and then drag that into the network transport. Cool. Okay, now let's go and drag that into a prefab. And I'm just going to put that up there. Looks good. And now we need a default player prefab. So let's create a capsule. Or sorry, a capsule's fine actually. And then we're going to reset the location, and I'm going to name this player. And also I'm going to add our player manager script to it that we made before. And now I am going to also make this a prefab after I rename it, because we need a prefab for the world network manager. So let's delete that. And now if we go to the world network manager down here, we can drag in our player prefab. And there we go. Good. All right. Now under our canvas, I'm going to rename this to main menu. And we're going to create our main menu script. And this is just going to have one function. It's just going to load us into the world basically after it starts the network. So let's open this up and delete the start and update functionality and drop in our namespace as is per tradition. Mine is SG, and I am going to simply say public void start game. Now what we want to do is start the network by saying network manager.singleton start host. You will need to say using Unity netcode for this. If I delete it, you can see it's going to give me grief. So make sure you do that. And then we want to load into the world. But first let's drag the on click event here. Let's go to the button and add an on click event, drag in our main menu, and then highlight main menu, start game. All right, cool. Now let's go and make sure our main menu scene is added to our scenes. And I'm going to bring it up to position 0 because I like having my main menu scene, scene index 0. And I like having my world scene, scene index 1. Now I'm going to add a network object to our player's prefab. And I'm going to just go into my project and search for the default network prefabs list. You should see the player should already be there. If it's not, make sure you add it. Next, I am going to say world scene manager.instance load world scene. And that is basically it for the menu. We don't need anything else. Okay, I'm going to just add a camera here to my main menu scene real quick so it doesn't say no camera. And I'm going to quickly add a camera to the world scene again too, just so it doesn't say no camera when I load in. And then I'm going to save this. And then we're going to drop back to our main menu scene. And then we're just going to go here, type in main menu, load this, save this, and I'm going to look for my player manager scripts. And I'm going to make a very simplistic way of loading a location. So normally you would get this location through your save data. So if you have a checkpoint system, you might look for a specific checkpoint in the scene and then get the location from that. But we're just going to drop one in on the prefab and pretend like that's already set up. So we're going to go and use an onEnable and onDisable method. And we're just going to basically use our scene manager by saying scene manager. And then we're going to say scene loaded plus equals, hit the tab key to auto generate a function. I'm going to call this on scene loaded. So this is going to fire when a scene loads, basically. Now I am going to rename this to scene loaded, and the load scene mode is going to be load mode. And then on disable, we can do the same thing, but instead of saying plus equals, we're going to say minus equals and just unsubscribe from the event. Alright, so normally what I would do, at least what I do in my game, is when I load into the scene, I wait for my world object manager to get me a checkpoint, and then I get the location of that checkpoint, or get a specific checkpoint depending on my character's save data, and then I load to that checkpoint. So we're going to kind of emulate that a little bit, but we're going to keep it very simple, obviously. So on scene loaded, we're going to say if scene loaded dot name is equal to the world scene manager dot instance dot world. So basically, if the scene that we have loaded into is the world scene, we know we got to get to a location. So I'm going to say location currently in. We want to load this. So what we're going to do is say world location manager dot instance dot load location, and then we pass this. But you might want to wait when you're loading to a location to get some specific references and stuff and such. So like I said, for example, if I was in my game, I need checkpoints, and my world object manager needs a frame or two to basically make sure that they're calling their awake method and their start method. So I don't want to run this instantly. What I'm going to do instead is use a coroutine. But first, let's drag in our location. Mine is going to be dungeon main hall. That'll be my first one. And I'm going to make a coroutine here when the scene loads. And we're going to say private IEnumerator. And then I'm going to call this wait for world scene, then load location. So this is where you want to get all your references, like let all your awake methods fire on the scene specifically and such. And if you want to basically get a specific thing, like in my case, I would get a checkpoint, but we're going to start this coroutine instead. And since there's actually nothing happening here, there's no, system set up for this, I'm simply just going to wait until the end of the frame and for this initial world scene to finish loading. And then I'm just going to go ahead and load the location I want. And that's it. So we'll save this. So we're going to go into the scene, it fires this coroutine, the coroutine waits a frame, and then we load our location. So if I go to start game and click the button, you can see, boom. So you can see here, all the scenes are just loading in. You can see here, the main hall has loaded, and the main hall requires the throne room, the dirt caves, and the stone caves. And you can see here, the dirt caves and the stone caves are all loaded. So there we go, working as intended. In the next video, I'm going to show you guys how I would create triggers for each of these areas. So basically, when you're in the world and you're walking around and you encounter a trigger, it will change the scene setup depending on the trigger you walk through. So we'll get into how to basically set up these triggers and shape them around the shape of your map. And then we're just going to push the capsule through the map and make sure that this is all working correctly. Okay guys, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have a very lovely weekend. Thank you to my patrons for keeping my lights on. Thank you to the people who take the time to like and leave a comment on the video and share it via word of mouth. You are much appreciated. I will see you guys next week.